Hello everyone, I'm the Mangoose. You are awesome, and today we're going to be talking about the business of gaming. And I've got two businessmen here. I have a business myself. I've selected all three of these people because we have owned and operated our own businesses before. From Project Stamina is the producer, Mr. FancyPants. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. And of course, you guys, he needs no introduction from Omega Studios, the game designer, RGSACE. How you doing, Ace?
I'm doing good, thanks. How about yourself?
Doing well. I'm excited to talk about this topic. Now, both of you have owned businesses within the tech industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My,
Uh,
mine.
so
Yeah. Go
well,
ahead.
it's a long story, but I worked in games for a long time, and then I branched out into laboratory analytics because there was an amazing opportunity here in Oregon, and I had the right people and the right equipment to launch a company. So I did that for a couple of years. Actually tried to swear off gaming, but then I sold the company and had nothing else to do, so I got back into making games.
Oh, right on. Um, yeah, my business is property preservation, has absolutely nothing to do with tech whatsoever, but I do understand some of the complications that come with running a business. So this should be a good conversation. What we're going to start out with is the free-to-play business model. It's very common out there. It seems like any MOBA or indie game kind of has to follow that free-to-play business model now because of I don't know, it's just so prevalent and that's what people expect. But is that what you need to do? Do you have to have a free to play business model? Fancy, what do you have to say on the topic?
I'd be willing to believe that there is a model out there that has like there's two basic models, and that's free to play and the games as a product, which has like a single play pay to entry, which is what Overwatch does, and technically they get away with it, but they also are Blizzard and can afford to put a paywall like in front of their products because so many people are going to buy them because they have such widespread popularity. I think for anything smaller, trying to crack into the market, putting a paywall in front of something not guaranteed to be as big as Overwatch is probably the way to go because you just need to reduce that barrier to entry to get people into the game and making it a part of their lifestyle.
Ace, you have anything to weigh in?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Mr. Fancy said. I think if you're a smaller studio, you want to it's all about those numbers, like getting as many people playing your game. And when you start adding things like people charging people to play your game, you're adding barriers to entry. That, you know, there's going to be people that don't want to pay for your game. Someone might want to try your game out, but they don't want to spend £40 to do so, and you might have lost a customer there. So I think free to play is kind of the way to go. And I think if you're a smaller studio, you want to be successful, it's kind of like a proven model that works.
Right. Yeah. And I there's a lot of See, there's difference here between Project Stamina and Predecessor. Predecessor is building upon the free assets released by Epic that were used for Paragon, and that's a matter of contention with a lot of people. They think that any game that's building upon pre-made assets shouldn't be able to charge any money whatsoever, which I don't they seem to live in a Disney movie where they think that everybody can just live off of sunshine and happiness and that everything will be great as long as you follow your heart. No, the game has to be sustainable in order for us to play them. They have to be able to make money, and people are entitled to a monetary reward for the effort that they put into these games. Project Stamina doesn't really have as much of that problem because you guys are building all your own stuff from scratch. However, you are basing it upon Gigantic, which is a game that came before you guys, and even though it is your own intellectual property, but it's obviously an ode to Gigantic. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there definitely has to be a way ahead with that. So as far as applying the free to play business model to you guys' games, what do you think, Ace?
So I think it kind of comes down to what kind of vision we have for the business as a whole. So yes, we do use Paragon assets, kind of long-term conversations that we've had with people from the industry, is that we want to move away from using Paragon's assets. So we'll kind of do the heroes, all the heroes, and then we'll kind of evaluate where we are as a business at that point. It definitely has its advantages. Like you can build a lot quicker. You have the assets. You don't need to worry about finding someone to animate all these things that go into making a hero,
Man, that
textures,
sounds
all.
nice.
Yeah, it's that we're definitely spoiled. So it allows you to you move at a lot quicker pace. I think as a startup especially, you need to be moving fast. Um, and so that's like the advantage. The disadvantage is that other people have those characters and they can put those in their game. Um, which kind of, it's like, oh, there's two versions of Chimera, like in this game, and I really like Chimera in game A, but I like, Twin Blast in game B. So there's this conflict that is probably not healthy to have, and so long term we would always want to move away from that. And if you're sharing assets, so this is kind of looping back into the whole free to play thing, is like if you're sharing assets with other games and people have the choice of playing different games, you definitely don't want to add barriers to your game already, because someone's going to be like, well, I've got Twin Blast over here and I can play him for free. The game might be, not as good or whatever. They might be, perfectly the same, but this game's free, so I'm gonna just play this game. And so for us, it's more, we're not really looking to make money in the short term. I think from from my experience in esports betting and the investors we have there, like we're backed by the largest gaming fund in the world. So we've spoken to people about, what kind of steps do we need to be taking so that becomes the proper business. And so we just want to focus on building a really good product, giving people access to the game through free to play, and then kind of evaluating where we are after we build those 38 heroes or whatever it is.
And then Fancy, it's a bit of the same thing with you because Paragon had very realistic looking, just blow you away graphics, whereas you guys went with the cell shading, which has become quite popular within games. I imagine it's probably easier to design a cell shaded character than a one of the Paragon models. However, you guys are doing all this from scratch, so, and it's all kind of in the eye of the beholder too, yeah.
So like it's a different kind of design challenge. I can't say it's easier. It's like it's less of a processor drag and like it's less graphics intensive, but there's nowhere to hide anything. So everything that you do has to be really clean. It's like it's different. It's a different kind of art. It's a different kind of design. Either way, like the amount of work that goes into making a character look good and be exciting and attractive to play is pretty massive. And as I think you were saying, Ace, when you look at like how to make that work sustainable, the early steps really can't be trying to bring in the income that makes all of that float, because without the massive player base to subsidize it, you're relying on a small amount of people to produce all of the resources that you need to keep that going. So in early development, as it seems like both of us are, all of the efforts really have to be going towards just bringing people in and keeping them engaged so that you can reach that critical mass, so that when you start asking for any amount of dollars, the price tag that you put on whatever it is that you're selling to make this whole thing work in the long term is not, you're not going to sticker shock people away.
Yeah, 100% agree. And if you look at like the average revenue per user of some of the biggest free games, if you forget about Fortnite, which is like absolutely ridiculous amount, League of Legends is at like, this is like historical figures, I don't know what they are from the past few years, but it's about $1 average revenue per user. So when you look at that, you really need to be hitting like a huge scale to have a sustainable business. I think Fortnite is like $90 per average revenue per user, which is like double. I think it's double Snapchat, double Google. I think from what I last looked. I looked at it a while ago.
Monthly or annual?
It's annual. Yeah, it's insane.
Okay.
When I saw that, I didn't believe it. Like it's ridiculous. Like 90x on what League of Legends was. But I don't know. They've taken historical League of Legends, so I don't know if they've improved over the time. But yeah, like you're saying, you need to hit like this critical mass.
That is absolutely bonkers. I didn't know. I mean, everybody knows that Fortnite's making money hand over fist. Epic
Yeah.
tripped over a diamond right there, but I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. But anyway, hopefully everybody, whenever you're looking at whenever these companies do ask for money or they do some sort of fundraising, I hope you do look at that and just be aware that you may not know as much as you think you do. You may think that all the Paragon assets are free. You can just plug them into the game and play. Why isn't this game running already? No, there's a lot more to it than that, and a lot of people have to put in hours and hours of work to make that happen. Same thing with Project Stamina. They're like, oh, well, those character models aren't the same poly count as the Paragon heroes. Why isn't this game already up and running? It's because there's a lot of work that goes into creating these new characters and doing their own animations and everything. So just bear that in mind whenever you're thinking about coming out of pocket and giving some of these guys some money, because they will need money to succeed. But we're going to move on to the next topic, which is the difficulties inherent when doing business in an international arena. For example, just this interview was difficult for me to set up with Ace being in Europe and Fancy being on the West Coast and me being on the East Coast. It was a little difficult to schedule a time and get everybody together at the same time. And I imagine with you guys having your teams just spread out all over the place, that it's got to be very difficult to manage. Fancy, I know you've made some comments about about moving away from brick and mortar establishments before. What do you got to say, man?
I think it's an entirely like with anything, any business model comes with trade-offs. There's something really nice about being able to just sit down in a conference room and figure something out with a whiteboard that everybody can see and point at. But more and more companies, especially tech companies, are moving in a direction of locationless of cloud offices, basically. Oh god, that sounds like a terrible movie. Visit the cloud office. Yeah, there are so many companies that are moving in this direction, and there's no reason it can't be done with games. Slack, I know, is a big one. Buffer, the social media company, does this really well. There are lots of marketing companies that are wildly spread out. They have central offices, but in 5 or 6 different cities, and teams on different accounts will just be wherever they could find the people that were best for that account. And it takes a different kind of coordination, but one, the technology to be able to do this, both in terms of raw internet bandwidth and also the digital organization tools to pick up the slack for not having people in the same room and in the same office and showing up to work at the same time every day. These tools exist in a way that they didn't really 10 years ago. And we have this entire generation of people who grew up extremely online and are familiar with the kinds of coordination that it takes. It's a little different, but it's got a lot of the same fundamental challenges of organizing an MMO raiding guild who are scattered across the world, but your main tank is on the East Coast and your 3 best healers are on the West Coast and your DPS leads are in Europe. So when do you have your raid? And this is a little bit more ongoing and every day, but it's the same principle. And did I lose you guys again? No,
not right here.
It's the same principle, and I think that this is the direction that we're going to be seeing a lot of tech companies going in the future. I based this model on a small but fairly successful mobile gaming company called Spry Fox. There was a series of articles on Game of Sutra called how Spry Fox designed itself to be a cockroach to survive the gaming industry, and I thought that it was really brilliant. So why don't we try it ourselves? And it's working out really great.
That's a great analogy
talk
too.
About the challenges, but
I like that analogy with the raiding guild, trying to coordinate that, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. Not even just an MMO raiding guild, but just gaming in general, trying to link everybody up at the same time. Ace, I know you guys are spread out all over several different countries. How do you guys resolve those challenges?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I think when I joined predecessor, it was I think it was a bit kind of chaotic. But at midnight, we have like a remote team. So we have our trading team is in Canada. We have developers. We have three developers north of the like northish in the UK, and then mostly everyone's in London. But we do have like remote people, and so a lot of the stuff that we do at midnight, I try to incorporate a predecessor as well. Um, it's slightly different when you're working on a project that everyone's putting their own time into because everyone's doing it because they want to do it. Whereas when you're working at midnight, which is basically a tech company, that's your job, you're paid to do that. So a lot of what we focus at midnight is more we want people to be more happy and like have think of this as the fun place to work. Whereas you don't really need to do that when you're working on a game you love.
Hmm.
But when it comes to like organizing things, we do at midnight, we have like a weekly stand up where people will showcase their work that they've done for the week. So everyone has their like 10 minutes of glory. And then we discuss what our goals are for the next week, why we didn't hit our previous goals, if we didn't. And everyone gets to share a bit about what they did. We do a similar thing for predecessor, where we just talk about what we're planning for the next week. Usually everyone's sharing what they're doing whenever they finish it, instead of sharing it at the end of the week. But I think when you're working on something like that you love, everyone just wants to share like, oh, I completed this today, I completed that today. But we kind of like want people to just share what they're doing. I think remote working is like super common. Like every time I've worked at a tech company or at midnight, it's like everyone there's remote people. Ruba works with Amazon, and so like they're a huge company, and so he's dealing with teams all across the world. So I think everyone's quite familiar with working remote, and I don't think there's any challenges anymore. Like it's super easy. It's like being in the same room thanks to technology.
Right on. Well, that's
Yeah.
good. Good to hear. Good to hear.
I think the biggest problem that I would imagine both of us are facing is because we are passion projects and we aren't anybody's full-time job. Well, it's my full-time job, but I'm blessed and able to work for free until this thing takes off. Um, the biggest challenge that we face is fighting with people's actual work schedules. Like we have people who are sitting down and showing up to work basically every free hour that they have, but their 3 hours are like 3 or 4 hours in the evening, a couple of nights a week. And so if you need a meeting with 5 people, you've got 4 or 5 different work schedules to contend with on different time zones, and not everybody works a 9 to 5 necessarily. So that juggling act is probably the single biggest challenge for progress. But it's really encouraging that the biggest problem that we have is one that we can definitely solve by throwing money at it eventually.
Yeah, just by paying your people and have them that this be their full time job.
Yeah. Like, hey, this is your job. Show up. Great.
And okay, so I think that closes that out. Let's talk about some of the hidden costs. I'm sure you guys could probably open my eyes to some things. Some of the things I thought about were advertising, server costs. That's about all I could think of. Ace, what are some of the hidden costs? What are some of the things that people might not be thinking of when they're thinking about game development and what needs to be paid for?
Yeah, so I think at this point we don't advertise, but we do that for midnight, and trust me that they can get expensive really quickly. But in terms of predecessor at the moment, you're looking at like server costs. So you got your bandwidth costs, any other sort of fees that they might charge. If you want dedicated support, that might be another fee depending on who you go with. Then you've got we use Perforce, so that has fees associated with it. Once you want more users, that basically allows us to work on code, push it so someone else can have it. It's sort of like Git, but just a better version. That's definitely not cheap. Then you've got, and also when you start taking in money, you also have to deal with payment providers who also take their fee on top of everything. Um, and then those payment providers have deals with Visa and whatever. Visa take their cut as well. Um, you also have to deal with the store that you're using. If you're on Steam or on Epic, there's a fee associated with that, whether it's a license fee or a fee on a transaction. If you have a website, you've got hosting fees. And then if you want to get down into like further details, when you're rendering, when you're building lights for a map, then you might have your PC on for 8 hours. If you're doing that, 4 or 5 times a week, that can add up over the course of a year. It's probably not anything crazy, but these are all costs that people incur just by working on a passion project. And I'm sure there's more that I've missed out. And Fancy might have some as well.
Oh, I mean, it's just kind of a continuation of that list. Like, all of our designers have to pay for their own tools. Maya is not cheap. Neither is ZBrush. The Adobe suite is like reasonably affordable for students, which some of our concept artists are like finishing up graduate or postgraduate degrees, so they get student copies of the Adobe suite, but that's still a couple $100 a year. And then, like you said, server costs and server maintenance, and then all of the development tools that you like. Do you want the legitimacy of having your own email domain? You got to pay someone for that. Otherwise, you're blank at Gmail, which we still are because we decided to buy the domain for our game name, which is still a secret. And yeah, like development tools. If you want like a robust task tracking system, like a project management app, which is one of the really critical pieces of working remotely, is having a strong digital storehouse of everyone's projects and project management tools. Those are not free. They usually charge per user. And then I guess one of the like it's not monetary when everybody's working for free, but one of the costs that a lot of people don't think about in game development is technical debt, which every time, like, there has never been a piece of software that was written perfectly the first time that it was written. There are always new features that need to get plugged into old systems and better, like, discoveries of better ways to manage large pieces of technical infrastructure to keep everything moving smoothly, so that you can do things like reconnecting to games when you get dropped from a client or lose your internet connection, so that you can do things like build wild new abilities on characters that kind of break the paradigm of what the game looks like so far. And those kind of interactions come with experimental code that kind of tells you that the thing is possible. And then when that's done, your development team has to make a choice between going back and cleaning up their work and moving forward and working on the next thing. And a lot of, especially gamers that aren't programmers, really don't see how much work it takes to fix bugs, especially when legacy code is involved. One of the famous ones is the flying horse in the Elder Scrolls series. Like, that exists because they've been using the same engine and just building on top of it for decades now. And it would probably take more work to rebuild the game just to actually fix that bug than it would take to make Elder Scrolls 7 and 8. And that kind of cost is completely invisible, but it continues to build up over time as developers add to a code base. And it can become like an insurmountable chain, like all to which you are chained and cannot progress further if you don't habitually pay down your technical debt through labor, which if you are able to pay your people is not free. And that's, I don't know, that's just one of the hills that I'm willing to die on, is paying down your technical debt is very important, even if it slows down the apparent progression of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, time is money. People don't really understand that until they get into, running a business themselves. Time definitely is money.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that's about it. Unless you guys had anything else you wanted to say on those topics.
I mean, I could talk about like the difference between advertising and marketing, but I could do that for an entire episode. So if you want to save that,
well, we'll save that then. Why don't we just go ahead and let you guys plug anything that you want to? Fancy, anything you wanna plug?
Okay, yeah. So check us out on projectstamina.com. All of the links to our social stuff is there, so just go to that one website. We are now taking signups for our first round of alpha, which has not started yet. So we have a sign up for an email list at the bottom of our webpage. Go there, sign up. You will get an email when it is time for the alpha to start with instructions on what to do next. That's a fun one. And check us out on Twitch. We've got a trailer coming out sometime early next year, and that's going to be really exciting.
Awesome. Ace?
Yeah, you guys can check us out at emodestudios.com. We're mostly active in Discord, so come pop in. I think we'll have some great stuff to showcase next year. And if you're into esports betting and you're over 18, you can come check me out on midnight.com, or you can just message me on Discord and I'll hook you up.
Right on, man. I'll go check that out myself. I knew about Reversify. I knew that you were into some esports betting. I didn't know you were actually part of the Midnight. I'm gonna take a look at that.
Yeah, the small thing here is we can't accept US customers though, because we're not licensed in the US.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I mean you can have a look at the site; it's all open and stuff, but we can't take US customers.
All right, awesome. I'll still take a look at it to see what people are betting on. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was a bit of an eye opener for a lot of people. That was kind of what I was aiming for with this little show. And yeah, Fancy, I would like to have you back again to talk about marketing versus advertising. I know that's kind of your forte, and that'd be a fun thing to discuss. But for now, I think that's going to be it. Thank you, Ace. Thank you, Fancy, for joining me. But this is the Mangoose signing off. You guys have a good one. Mangoose.